Hello, I'm Samuel Pollen. I'm the author of The Year I Didn't Eat, which is a teen book about a boy who has an eating disorder. It's called Max. It's published by Zuntold in the UK and by Yellow Jacket in the US, and you can get it in all of the places you normally buy books. Independence, Amazon, Waterstones in the UK, Barnes & Noble in the US, all of those places. And please do, because it's a great thing for me. And it's a really enjoyable read. Lots of people have got a lot out of it, particularly particularly if they know someone who has an eating disorder, or maybe they've been through something like that themselves. Obviously, if you have been through something like that yourself, or you think you have a predisposition to that, read with care, and approach a book like that cautiously, because it can be triggering, that kind of book. But lots of people have found it helpful, which is a lovely thing to hear. Anyway, today I wanted to talk to you about some writing tips for people who may be thinking about writing themselves, maybe tried writing a little bit, not sure what to do next. I wanted to give 3 little tips, and to be honest, lots of authors give writing advice, and I think it's often a really annoying thing to do. So these are very general tips because I've been asked to do that. I think lots of writing advice, all writing advice that you hear should be discounted if it doesn't appeal to you, if it's not your way of doing things, because everyone does things differently. And I think lots of people try and emulate, their perfect, they're obsessed with perfect, so lots of Stephen King has written a book on writing, and George Orwell's rules for writing you hear a lot about. And my overall view is that there's all kinds of different ways of writing. Some people do it early in the morning, some people write every day, some people, write a book in 2 weeks and then don't ever do it again. All of those things are fine if you want to do it. It's also fine not to write if you don't want to do it. There's lots of kind of trying to understand this creative mind, and actually creative people are just like uncreative people in that they are just doing their thing, and that's fine. Anyway, 3 tips from my perspective, things that are helpful for me, which you can either follow or completely ignore. Both of those things are okay. Number 1, done is better than perfect. So what I mean by that is you can stare at a blank page of something and worry about what that perfect first sentence is going to be, and that perfect first paragraph is going to be, and where exactly in your story you need to start. And you can worry about that for literally years, decades. Lots of people do that. They think, I've got this thing I want to write about, but I don't know where to start. So much better to just write something, and it will be bad, and that's okay, right? That's what every author I know has been through. I think this is probably one that is actually quite universal, is that they have written something to start and they weren't happy with it, but they carried on. And eventually they got that into a place where they were happy with it. Or maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Lots of people are not happy with things they've actually written and published as well. But hey, so get started. However, just start with a bit of dialogue in the middle of a scene. Doesn't matter. Just write something. From there, once you've got something to work on, you can kind of chip away. Right? It's about adding to that. It's much easier to add to something that started than to start from scratch. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, write what you care about. So my debut book, Year I Didn't Eat, is about anorexia, because that's something I'd been through myself, and that meant 2 things. That meant, 1, I understood it, and I felt I could add something that was actually useful, because it was a kind of complex, a mental health problem is a complex thing, and it's easy to kind of misrepresent it and portray it in a way that doesn't feel true to people who've been through it. So that was one thing. It gave me kind of authenticity. But it was also interesting, I thought it was a topic that I was kind of fascinated by. There is this kind of general piece of advice you'll hear people say, which is write what you know. And what people mean by that is, I think, something really important, which is don't write stories that aren't quite yours to write. So a really classic example of that would be white people writing stories that is more appropriate for someone from a minority community to write. And that's a really important bit of advice. But I would also say that people can take write what you know the wrong way, because they can think it means you can never write about anyone whose life isn't like you, any experience you haven't been through. And that's a really bad thing, because I think the whole point of books really is about imagining the world from different people's point of view. And if you can literally only write things that you think, that are the world as you see it, I don't think that makes for particularly interesting books. And if you think obviously about crime books, fantasy books, most genre fiction is not written is not written from someone having been through that. No one actually slayed a dragon ever. Sorry to break that to you. You know, they imagined what that experience would be like. That's obviously a very silly example, but you get the point. That I think what makes books really special is when they take you into someone else's head, and you know, for an author, being able to imagine the world from lots of different points of view is what makes your books good. So, write what you care about is a kind of nuanced version of write what you know. You know, write something that you're interested in, write something that you're willing to spend time engaging with and kind of getting your head around. But don't just write what you know. Go beyond that. Number 3, which is a much more practical tip. Those are kind of like high-level tips. This is much more just every day. I'm a copywriter as well, so I write things for companies every day. So this also comes from that experience. Read it out loud. It sounds kind of simple, and it sounds also people just don't want to do it because you sound like an idiot and you hate the sound of your own voice when you read stuff back to yourself. But actually, and I can prove that from having done readings, including in, you know, some of these videos. Hate reading, hate the sound of my own voice, just feels awful. But when you read stuff out loud, and by the way, when I say that, I mean I'm talking about doing it yourself, privately, quietly, wherever you want to do it, you trip over things that are written badly. You realise there's a typo, you realise there's an extra word that doesn't need to be there, you realise you could cut that bit out, you realise that sentence is far too long, like this sentence I've just spoken. That experience of reading out loud allows you to hone your writing, and I think is the easiest step anyone can take to write more effectively. So, to summarise, done is better than perfect. Just write something, see how it turns out. Write what you care about. So, yes, think about the kind of sensitivities around what you write, but most of all, just write something you're interested in and willing to spend time kind of engaging with. And 3, read it out loud and use that to hone your writing. So these are 3 writing tips from me. To recap me, I'm Samuel Pollen. I wrote this book, The Year I Didn't Eat. You can buy it in the UK and the US at the moment, and soon a few other places. And it's about a 14-year-old boy with anorexia. It's written for sort of 10 to 15-year-olds, but people of all ages pretty much have told me they've got something out of it, so hopefully it's an enjoyable book, whoever you are. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.